Hi, my name is Cindy Inselmann, and I am going to be presenting to you my research on family systems therapy and how that then relates to my future career as a counselor, and then how it applies to our case study of Mary Black. So, as we dig in, let's start looking at, what is family systems therapy? I found this definition on Psychology Today and I really liked it, so I would like to share it with you today. Family systems therapy is a form of psychotherapy that helps individuals resolve their problems in the context of their family unit, where many issues are likely to begin. Each family member works together with the others to better understand their group dynamic and how their individual actions affect each other and the family unit as a whole. One of the most important premises of family systems therapy is that what happens to one member of the family happens to everyone in the family. So let's first start looking at the family systems and their perspectives. What is the perspective of family systems therapy? Well, it's a very difficult adjustment for our Western counselors because our Western culture really does tell us that we are autonomous and that we are independent and that we are capable of independent thought and we have the freedom of speech and the freedom of choice. And so it's just that we are individuals and really family systems is really looking at the whole and looking us as we react and that we really can't look at one piece of the puzzle. We need to look at the whole family as a whole in order to be able to understand people's behaviors and how they affect everyone. And so family system, again, like I said, is the best place to learn about an individual. And that because all individuals are born into a family, which is true. I mean, even my son, who was an orphan, lived in an orphanage, and that is a family. That was his family for the first 4 years of his life. And so, and most of us will continue to live our lives in a family. We'll live most of our lives in a family type system because we are in relationships and we will continue to live with others. Also, it is in our family where we discover who we are. It is in our family that we kind of develop, as little kids into adulthood and develop what we define ourselves and how we define ourselves. And it is in our family where we receive our support. So when we're going through those struggles or transitions, we depend on our family for that support. And also, each family comes with their own unwritten rules to keep the family working. And that's important too, that each family has to create its own set of rules in order to make it so that they can continue to function properly within themselves. And those rules can be healthy or dysfunctional. Perspective assumes that an individual's problematic behavior may serve as a function or purpose in the family, be unintentionally maintained by the family, function out of the family's inability to operate productively, especially during times of transition or change, be a symptom of dysfunction that's passed down from previous generations. So it's something that the grandparents teach the parents, and then the parents then teach the children. So what is the family systems approach? It is exploring the family rules and methods of operation. We are inviting the whole family into the therapy session so we can actually look at basically the whole picture and how that individual reacts within the whole. It focuses on the relationship that promotes the problematic behavior. So we're assuming that there is a dysfunction in the whole system that's creating this problematic behavior. It also is looking at how The system influences an individual's behavior, and it observes how the individual's interactions within their family system. So how I react might be influencing and changing those people within my family, and what system changes need to occur to help solve the issue. So the therapeutic techniques of family therapy. The goals of the therapy sessions are two basic goals: are reduce the behavior of dysfunction within the family and bring change within the family system to help the family operate more effectively. There are 4 stages of therapy. The first stage is forming a relationship. Like in all therapy, the relationship between the counselor and the client is very important. And here, the therapist needs to form a collaborative relationship, not only with their client, but also with the family. The therapist focuses on creating a relationship that is based on genuine care and interest in both the client and the family. It's out of mutual respect and empathy. The therapist needs to create the relationship with everybody in the family. So they need to make sure that they take care to really genuinely create a bond with everyone that is in the therapeutic session. Now, the therapist can decide who is to come to the therapy sessions or not, meaning that the therapist can choose kind of like the requirements of the family. Is it whoever wants to come to the session can come, or is it that everybody must attend the counseling sessions? And that's up to the therapist. And then the therapist's role is also to maintain the process and the structure of the family therapy. So throughout this whole thing, they're going to keep things moving and make sure that the process is being followed. The second stage is that of conducting an assessment. The assessment process begins with creating a genogram, and I have a little simple sample of one of those here. It's usually on a very large, big piece of paper, and the genogram maps out the family that is present at the counseling session. And you will be looking at the oldest members of the family on the top, with the youngest moving down to the youngest members of the family on the bottom. Males are rectangles, females are circles. You want to also have all of the family members' names, their birth dates, their ages, and any other important dates of marriages or deaths or divorces, and that's also laid out on your genogram or your map. You are going to have lines that kind of are going to be bringing the family members together. So to spouses, there'll be a line directly connecting them. If there's a divorce, then there's 2 kind of hash marks in the line to signify that there's a divorce. If there's 1 hash line, then that signifies a separation. If it's a dotted line, that says that it's an informal relationship. And then, of course, if someone is deceased, then that person is X'd out. Also, the assessment includes the family telling their story and explaining their roles within the family. The counselors should be learning the patterns of the behavior and the family's perspectives and the roles of the different family members. So this process of assessment is going to be a lot of the counselor asking how, and that why they're focusing kind of on those how questions is they really they want to be wondering what the thought process is and why they're doing what they're doing. And they're really looking at that process and the perspective. The next stage is synthesis and sharing meaning. This is to kind of create a set of ideas for the family and the situation that are useful. It's in sharing this hypothesis, the council will kind of generate some feedback from the family It's going to be an important time for having the family kind of have some open discussion, and they can start looking and kind of analyzing and hypothesizing the meaning behind some of the behaviors that they're doing. It's important that during this time that there's no blaming for the dysfunction, or that no one's feeling like they're being used as the scapegoat. And the counselor needs to be very aware of their own biases, because during this process, because they don't want to influence the process negatively. And so the counselor wants to really have the family leading this process and really coming up with their own hypotheses and their meaning. And so that's why the counselor needs to be aware of their own biases so they don't influence that. And then lastly is facilitating change. This is, again, a joint and collaborative process. The general goals of facilitating change is going to be help the family to become balanced. The theory is that if the family is more balanced, that they're going to be able to function better. Also help the family to see each other as resources, just seeing that each member of the family is a valued person that has an importance. And help them to think more, and than being more of an emotional reactor. So of course, when we think before we react, that's always a more healthier kind of reaction. And so then that's part of this, is the counselor will help them understand how they can think more and kind of not have so much of that emotional reactions where they're just reacting out of their gut emotions. And also help the family understand the goal and purpose of their behavior, the feelings or the interactions, and that so they are able to make better choices. The thought is that if you understand why, or the purpose or the goals, and why you do or feel or interact the way you do, that makes you more aware, and with that awareness you're able to make better choices. So now, with that being said, and kind of explaining what family systems is in a nutshell, why do I like this theory? I do believe that God created us to be in relationship. God intends us to be in families. God has given each and every one of us a role to play in our families. And that's because there is so much that needs to be done in order for us to function in our society, that we each need to kind of take a role so that we're kind of to lessen all the responsibilities and we're able to work better together. And so I do feel that if one of the members of the family isn't working correctly, that does affect the other members of the family. Also, when you look at an individual behavior separate from the family, the behavior doesn't always seem to make sense. But when you really do look at the behavior and how it works within the family and how it impacts the family, and see how the family members respond to that behavior, then you're able to see much more of a bigger picture. And I kind of look at this like when you look at even our body. I look at my mom, who has congestive heart failure. I mean, her heart's not functioning correctly, so that means her lungs have to work twice as hard, and so her lungs are kind of always tired and not working at their best because they're so tired. This also affects her energy level and how her moods and everything else. So just because her heart's not working right, the rest of her body suffers because of that. And so I think that's so much that in a family that we're a body, and that if one member of the family is not working correctly, that does affect the whole family system. And so I just think that really does make a lot of sense to me. And so I just feel that that's how God made us, and that's how we need to really look at our behaviors and when we go forward. So, can I use this theory? How would I use this theory in my future career? I need to keep in mind that with a client's behavior, that they might be influenced by their family unit. Remembering that if I might decide to make some changes in my life, that is going to impact my husband's life, and that's going to impact my children's life. And they can either support my change that I've made in my behavior, or they cannot support it. And then they would almost sabotage my efforts. And I think of that kind of in that weight loss. I mean, if I'm trying to get all this healthy eating and just really focusing on eating right and losing weight, but yet my family keep shaming me for that, or they keep bringing in a bunch of junk food that they know is really tempting, then that really does sabotage my efforts to make change. But if I'm doing weight loss and they're on my side and they're working with me and they're supporting my change, then that makes things a lot easier. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind, especially as you move forward in a counseling situation. How is the family reacting to the change, and do we need to bring the family in to help them deal with the different changes, and because there might be dysfunction there too. And now as we kind of wrap, so as I wrap up our presentation on family therapy, I am going to be applying it to our case study of Mary Black. I think that family systems therapy would be very beneficial for Mary Black. Mary does come from an abusive family, and so I do wonder what dysfunctional coping strategies did Mary learn growing up with an abusive father. I mean, we do know that he was an alcoholic. He verbally abused her, he physically abused her, and we also know that her mom and her dad did not have a healthy marriage, and so that was not a healthy role model of marriage. And so you do wonder what dysfunctional coping strategies Mary did learn and have applied to her grown-up relationships with her children and her husband. Also, I wonder what role does Mary see herself in her family? She seems to be repeating that role of caretaker in her relationship with Ken, in that relationship, and in past boyfriends. And so I do wonder, like I said, how will this affect her future relationships? And, so what does she want to change? So as she looks forward to future relationships, if she's going to have a future relationship with another man, how is she going to change her behaviors and start creating that healthy relationship that I think she is desiring and wanting? And then also, what changes does she want to see with her relationship with her children and in that relationship as she kind of goes forward too? And so I think that is an area that we need to kind of explore. I realize that one of her main feelings right now is grief and anger, and so we do need to get her past that. But I think once we get her past that, I think that family therapy would be beneficial in kind of mapping out what dysfunctional habits or behaviors does she have and how she might want to change those. So I think that'd be a good thing for her to explore. And so I think that's about it as I wrap up my presentation. Thank you for listening and hope you have a great day. Bye.